And a very good evening to you, and welcome to Politics 101. It's a Monday evening, Monday night, Monday afternoon, after the weekend. Welcome to our program. It's 7 o'clock hour in Guyana, and it's the place to be. Of course, we start here at 7 o'clock, and Mr. Duncan starts at 8 o'clock, and Mr. Ben Shop at 9 o'clock. That's our prime time, Monday through Friday. Of course, we take a break on Saturday and Sunday, and I think the other programs are on those days. And so welcome to all of you faithful listeners and viewers, and to the new listeners and viewers, welcome to Politics 101. We do it here at 7 o'clock Monday through Friday. And tonight we are going to be continuing our conversation. We have a new guest, a Westmaas, Yuri Westmaas. And we've talked a lot here about the Westmaas family. Rory Westmaas, David Westmaas, Nigel Westmaas, and so forth. And Yuri is from that clan, the Westmaas family, a political family. He's going to be joining us to weigh in on a number of issues. And we have Shaneika Haynes, who is a member of the PNC, young member. And you know, we've been under a lot of pressure to get young people to come on, to these programs. And I got a note from Shaneika over the weekend. And today, one of the strong supporters of this program told me that we gotta get some more young people on. And I told him, look, we're going to be having at least one young person and one not so young person on tonight. And so here we are. If you join us from Guyana, welcome. Welcome to Politics. It was day one of the teachers' strike. And I've seen some pictures, some videos of the teachers in front of the Ministry of Education demonstrates a good sign. It's a good sign. The right to strike is an important right. And Guyana was invaded in October of 1953. Invaded by its, at that time we were still a colony of England, and England invaded Guyana. Why? Because the government of that day, the first self-government that we had, the PPP, the old PPP, not the new PPP, not the present PPP, the old PPP, the PPP of Jagan Burnham, Martin Cartner, Sidney King, Rory Westmaas, Janet Jagan, Jane Phillips Gay, Jesse Burnham, etc., Ramkaran, Boise Ramkaran, the old PPP. That PPP had come to government, and one of the things it did was it passed a bill to give trade unions the right to represent workers. And that triggered an invasion of Guyana. The right to strike and the right to be represented by unions is a sacred right. Before there were political parties in our Caribbean, there were trade unions. The first trade union in the English-speaking Caribbean, 1919, the British Guiana Labour Union, BGLU, led by none other than Hubert Nathaniel Critchlow. And then other unions followed in the Caribbean. And these unions had political arms. And it was these political arms that became political parties. There were trade unions before political parties. And to hear political parties talking down and threatening trade unions today It's a major insult to our heritage. Major insult. The right to strike is sacred. Under the old PNC, back in the day when people like myself and others were battling against the overreach of the PNC of that time, when there were strikes, the PNC used to say the strikes are political. This government is not just saying strikes are political, they're saying strikes are illegal and illegitimate. They've gone further, threatening trade unionists. Good evening. If you join us from Guyana, good evening to you for joining us from Georgetown. Good evening to all teachers. Good evening to all teachers. Teachers are, of course, central to the upbringing of a nation, our nation. Before there were many of us, there were teachers. And to see the way teachers are being treated in Guyana today is a shame. It's a shame. As we would say in Guyanese parlance, I'm ashamed to tell you all that where I am today is teachers get me here. I don't know what my life would have been had it not been for the influence and the encouragement of my teachers. My kindergarten teachers who used to hold our hands with that pencil on the slate, hold your hand and teach you to write. I remember that well. Teacher Paulette, she's still alive. In Brooklyn, I went to see her a couple of years ago when I passed through there. She was my first teacher. And I remember that lady holding my hand with that pencil on that slate to teach me how to write. Teacher Emmy Yaw, who died a couple of years ago. Those were my first two teachers. I remember them because teachers are as important as parents. In the first place, they take me into school when I wasn't ready to go to school. Apparently, I used to chat a lot at home, and I used to read, and I think I read one of my auntie love letters one day, and I was reading aloud, and she come in and hear me. I find this letter in her chest drawer. I don't know. I was reading, and I wasn't supposed to be reading. And she said, "You not staying in here. I go in and beg the prep school teacher them to take you in, because I think you have to wait until you were 5 or something to start to go to kindergarten." And since I read a lady love letter, she decided, you too much. And she go and beg them to take me to prep school earlier. So in the first place, they take me in Miss Leander to prep school earlier than I was supposed to go. But teachers, they cradle and still do. They still do. It was no accident that after emancipation and our foreparents bought those lands and created those villages, the first thing they did, is that they start building the churches, and next door to the churches, the schools. Go in them village and you would see it there. Spirituality and education, teacher. Teachers are very, very important and ought to be treated with dignity. And so that our teachers have decided to go on strike. And we know they've been talking about this for years. They've been pleading, begging, crying with the government. Treat us properly. First day of the strike. From what I've been hearing, there's been a good response. And the teachers said they're going to strike for 14 days in the first instance. Let us give them all the support they need. None of us would be where we are without our teachers. God bless them. God bless them. But they also need to be treated well. We have an education crisis in our country. Despite all the fancy numbers that we see, all the children who are getting 20-something subject and so on and so forth, all is not well in our system. All is not well. We parade those who do well, the 1 or 2% at the top. It is those at the bottom. Go in the hinterland areas among Amerindians. They're not performing as well as those on the coastlands. Go among poor people who are not able to afford. Because although education is free, public education is free, the teachers got to buy their own story and carry in school. Parents got to contribute. Welcome to Politics 101. If you're joining us from the rest of the Caribbean, welcome. Welcome to Politics 101. Antigua, Barbuda, St. Kitts Nevis, Dominica, Grenada, Petit Martinique and Carriacou, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Jamaica, Barbados, Trinidad and Tobago, St. Martin, the US Virgin Islands, the British Virgin Islands, wherever you are. Welcome to Politics 101. The Bahamas. Lots of our teachers are there. They would like to come home and teach. They would like to come home and teach. Those of you who are joining us from North America, welcome. Welcome. Brooklyn, Queens, the Bronx, upstate New York, downstate New York. Those of you who join us from the South, the old South, the deep South, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Tennessee. I know there's some of you join us from Tennessee. Texas, Arizona, California, and of course those of you in the Midwest, Ohio and Chicago. Welcome to Politics 101, and not forgetting our troopers, those in Europe, especially in England. It's nighttime there, night, 11 o'clock. And you people are still on, and you're all doing 11 to 12 with me, 12 to 1 with Mr. Duncan, 1 to 2 with Mr. Ben Shop. How you all do it, God in heaven know. You all have to be real patriots. Give thanks. Welcome to Politics 101. And I'm not forgetting those of you in Paramaribo and Cayenne. Old timers like me don't say Suriname and French Guyana. It's Paramaribo and Cayenne. Welcome to Politics 101. We're ready to roll tonight to begin to talk, continue to talk about our situation. It's the month in Belize. I keep forgetting, one of my favorite places. I haven't been to Belize in a couple of years, but it's one of my favorite places. Special people there. Special people, the Garfunas. You know, the Amerindians and Africans cohabited back then, and the British determined that they couldn't take the breed, the mixture of Amerindians and Africans, and they take them and put them on boats and set them adrift in the Caribbean Sea. And they landed on the coast of Central America. So there's some of them in Costa Rica, some in Honduras. The majority of them in Belize, they're called Garafunas. In colloquial language, they call them Black Caribs. Black Caribs. Garafunas. Good evening to you if you're joining us from Belize. Good evening. Someone is joining us from Scotland. Good evening. And somebody is joining us from Connecticut. Good evening. Welcome to Politics 101. Very diverse audience here tonight. The first day of the teachers' strike. Welcome to Politics 101. Let me bring my guests in because I think they're ready to go. Yes, it's about that time. Let's Yuri Westmaas. Good evening, my brother.
Good evening. Thank you for having me on the show.
And thank you. You're making your debut.
Yeah, thank you.
Your debut. Make your debut.
Debut.
And Shaneika, my sister, welcome to Politics 101. Again, thanks for reaching out to me over the weekend and nudging me in this direction. Of course, you're close and dear to my heart. I like young people taking up this thing and running with it and so forth. So you're always special to me. Welcome again to Politics 101.
Thank you, Dr. Haynes. Always a privilege.
Thank you. Let's start, Yuri and Shaneika, the strike today. The strike that started today, teachers' strike. Nobody should be celebrating a strike. Nobody should. So we're not celebrating a strike. But I want to get from you all some thoughts on what is the significance of that strike, that teachers in this day and age, in this time of plenty, and in this time when money sharing around, teachers have to go on strike. Yuri, I'll start with you.
Okay, so I can start where I started with good teachers. I'm here today because of my teacher, my Spanish teacher, Mrs. Williams, Christchurch Secondary. And these were hardworking teachers. Mr. Pearson taught French. But the whole thing about it is that I was growing up in 1992, and after the PPP came into office, you thought that there would have been a change for the better, collective bargaining, stuff like that. But from what I'm seeing today, it's a shame. It's despicable. I think that there's no civil discourse anymore. There's all back and forth and argument and what and I see the Minister of Education now rushing to remedy the situation at the last minute. And in 2018, she was the one arguing for the teachers, and now she's taking the opposite stance. It's dictatorship at its maximum. That's all I can say.
Dictatorship at its maximum. Yuri Westmaas here. Yuri, of course, is a member of that famous political family in Guyana. The old timers would remember Rory Westmaas, who was among the founding fathers and mothers of our nationalist movement, the original PPP. His father, David Westmaas, was a personal assistant to Dr. Cherry Jagan, and of course his brother, Nigel Westmaas, got his start there in the PPP, but came over to the WPA, and is what we may call my grow match. Nigel and I used to hang out together. We used to, in those days, hard guava days, we used to butter fry rice in two. In those days you could have butter fry rice in two because
The wrong bag.
the brown bag, and you used to get good portion, yes. Yuri, it's a pleasure to have you and to have your insight. Shaneika, this teacher strike, what are your thoughts?
The teachers' strike. My thoughts. It is very sad that at this time, at this stage where the government continuously boasts, and particularly after our largest budget ever, $1.146 trillion was allocated for this year, that our teachers have to feel the need to go to the streets or to lock up the schools to be able to be heard. Now, the thing is, we have a situation where, the government would have, like Yuri just indicated in 2018. I posted her post actually today on my page, and she basically said, she wished that they wouldn't have had this strike during this period. And, she thought that the government would have acted sensible and reasonable to give the teachers more or what they deserve. This was the words of the current Minister of Government, the Minister of Education sitting there right now. This was her words in 2018 when teachers were dissatisfied with what they were getting. Although during that period, teachers also benefited from the increases that all public servants got, that was way more than what they are giving in what they're so proudly sit and say. We have the fastest growing economy. Inflation is at 2% according to the minister responsible for finance in this country. And they are sitting there telling teachers and public servants that they cannot do better. This is what they're doing, telling us at this stage that they can't do better. And it is disheartening to just imagine that over the weekend, instead of trying to bargain and focus and maybe see if they can come up with something, the government and the ministry spent the weekend contacting teachers all over the country to beg them to tell lies to the population, beg them to make videos, and they spend that time just putting out lots of propaganda on their page. And I rather suspect spending money to do so rather than deciding to put that money into the teacher's hand. And there is something else that we must take into perspective as we talk about this now, that is more recent. When they passed the budget last Friday, they also decided to rectify the NRF bill, where what they're basically doing is now giving themselves permission to take out what I will call all of the money from what we should be putting up as well to save. That will affect not just us here now, but literally this will affect my children and their children. Literally, because of what they're doing and the borrowing, every household also has on average a $15 million debt on their head now.
Shaneika, I want you to zero in a little bit here because you mentioned your children. You're a young mother, a mother of young
Yes,
children. And
correct.
so, and I know that you take an interest in what's happening in the schools
Yes.
with your children. Tell us as a parent, the challenges that you have observed that teachers have in doing their jobs.
Listen, the challenges are extreme and it's great because, listen, you have in secondary schools, we have the video as well that is circulating where the minister literally or basically said to teachers that this grant that we're giving to you, which is allocated per child for the class for supplies, whether it's chalk, anything that is needed for the classroom per child. And the government is handing out this grant where teachers have to provide receipts for every single thing that is purchased. But the minister still stands in front of the media and says to them that we know the teacher isn't going to spend all that money, so they have that to put in their pocket. In essence, you're telling the nation that the teachers thief in the money that you give them for the children. That level of disrespect coming from the Minister of Education, talking of this about a disbursement that is given for each child in a class. I can tell you in my daughter, my eldest daughter, goes to a very prominent secondary school. And in that school, which you would assume you should have all the things that are necessary, they constantly have to ask for donations for
Yeah.
things like a sick bay, a
Yeah.
bed,
Mm-hmm.
chalk,
Mm-hmm.
all these other things that a school is required to have. They have a lab that the majority of the computers in this lab is not working. So your children still have to find a computer to come in to do what is necessary. And this is considered a top school. So I can only imagine what is happening with teachers and parents having to deal with whatever else the teachers ask for at the regular schools, the junior schools. Because if this is the schools that they call the their best, and they're treated like that, you have issues, teachers having to go to UG, etc. Some of those classes are still left unattended. Teachers, especially in the primary sector, generally this grant that they're giving, we hope that it really helps them to give an ease in terms of the materials they buy. But as long as I know, teachers have been buying out of their own pocket to
Pocket.
make aids. And not only that, because of the state of our economy, some teachers have to spend their own money to buy lunch
Yeah.
for their students,
For the students,
because
yes.
they see the need, and they wouldn't sit there back and look at their children in their class punish. So it's not only the school supplies that teachers sometimes put their hand in their pocket to get, but simple things like that. Sometimes you got children coming to school that don't even have a proper bag. The parents can't afford to buy it. And here you'll hear them talk about, oh well, they're giving this $40,000 or $45,000 grant that they give once a year, which must be emphasized, once a year, although we have 3 school terms,
Mm-hmm.
to the parent to supply these needs. And in many cases, just transportation, and that money is completed. We
That money.
haven't talked about books and how they eat every day and all of that.
Oh, they eat every day. Shaneika Haynes here, a young member of the People's National Congress. Tonight, I rather suspect on our capacity as a mother of children who are in our school system. And she has been giving us our perspective there. I come back to you, Yuri Westmaas. Yuri, you contacted me, and you thought that we should dig a little bit deep into the human element surrounding Shamar Joseph, who's now, his name is on the tip of the tongues of not only Guyanese, but people across our region and across the world. And we noticed the government attempting to own him and all of that. But we know better than that. We see a young man who has performed a great feat that, in a sense, has lifted the spirits of his country and his region and the world. That what he did went beyond the boundary, to quote C.L.R. James. But often when we see a Shamar Joseph, we don't see what goes into the making of Shamar, what goes into the making of the Shamar Joseph. Who nurtured him? He's now 24 years old. He didn't drop from a coconut tree, as we would say, And so I want you to talk a little bit about that aspect of when we see the Shamar Josephs of this world. What is it that goes into the making of them that is not always seen with the naked eye?
Parenting and discipline, and instilling a sense of decency, which my parents did. My father, for example, when I was growing up, we could not sit at the kitchen table without a shirt. It was forbidden to sit without a shirt. You cannot put your elbows on the dining table. It's considered flying. You did not take more food than was necessary. if you wanted more, you went back for a second helping. But there was no gorging yourself or piling your plate. There was, he always said, oh, and another thing he didn't like was the sound of the water running in the kitchen. He said there are children in Africa who don't have water right now. Turn off the tap. But I guess I'm emphasizing here that he didn't believe in beating children, first of all. He believed in a quiet discipline that he instilled in us. You know, I grew up, as you know, I grew up in a house with a WPA member and a PPP member. So there was disagreements, but they were always civil. There was no, the four-letter words were not used. My father hated the sound of that, and he would tell you there's a certain word you don't, is the S word, you don't like how it looks, you don't like how it smells, you don't want to touch it. Why is it coming out your mouth? So he, and so when I look at Shamar Joseph, I can definitely say his mother and father did a wonderful job, and I'm sure his siblings probably encouraged him to. My brothers were all supportive of me. Nigel, you know, my father, when I didn't know a word, he would send me to the dictionary if I wanted to spell it. He said, "There's a dictionary, go learn." You know, and so I grew up with this sense of pride and discipline and an all-encompassing love for neighbors, friends, family, and so on. I think that what shines through with Shamar Joseph is, I mean, in the backyard, you know, using guava to bowl, you know, to bowl, to master the art of bowling. Um, we did that when we were small. We didn't have, you know, fancy toys and that kind of thing. We played cricket in the yard, as you know, or cricket in the house. And so I just admire wherever his parents are, you know, I wish the world would see them and congratulate them for such a beautiful job on that boy.
Parenting as an important aspect of the upbringing of our young people. We see them, we see the finished product, and we don't know what has gone in to that process. And Shaneika, as you digest the Shamar Joseph moment, he's closer to your age and he's to Yuri's and oh God, me. And so there must be a deep feeling. Talk to us, share with us.
First off, I would love to say congratulations to him. It was definitely a proud moment for Guyana and more importantly for the West Indies and our Caribbean countries, because we know that that was a setting where history was made after a very, very, very long time. So it was definitely a very proud moment. And what I would hope that would happen next is that the government decides to, of course, give their support in everything that would be needed to keep that level of performance up wherever it's needed. Um, I was a national athlete myself when I was younger, not, of course, not cricket or anything like that. I ran. And one of the things that we still have a problem with in our country is much effort and emphasis is not put in to athletes or persons pursuing, to get to that higher height from the government setting in. And this is not just necessarily in one area, because there is much more that can be done. We know for cricket, there is a lot that happens, yes, here, but I'm sure that there is more that can happen. And I would love to see that translate for many other of the activities that we participate in, particularly track and field. You have the swimming, we see a bit going into squash, and these other things. We have lots of netball players, basketball. The Bishop High School has been going out of the country and winning big in the Caribbean as well. And these are things that I hope to see the ministry that is responsible for youth, sports, and culture take a deeper look into, and let's not make those things political. They shouldn't be. This should be the place where we just nurture the abilities of the persons going in to these fields, because it takes a lot. It's lots of monies that are usually spent behind these sports and training, and much of that is never returned. And if persons don't have parents who push them or find the finances or find sponsors, they don't get to go anywhere or do anything or strengthen that ability. So while we're seeing all of these stars coming out of our country, I hope that we can see how we can put more into it, and really put our name on the map across the board when it comes to sports and the activities of youth and culture particularly.
Youth and culture particularly, and it's amazing what one little moment can do. And I want to share this anecdote with you all and with our audience. A couple of weeks ago, one of my colleagues, where I work, said he wanted to take his family to the Caribbean for a vacation this year, and where I would recommend, apart from Jamaica, since everybody know about Jamaica. So I suggested St. Lucia, and he was excited. He went, he did the research and so on, and said St. Lucia is it. And he emailed me 2 or 3 days ago to say, David, I think I'm changing my mind from St. Lucia. I want to go to Guyana. I don't know why you didn't recommend Guyana, but he's a follower of cricket. And so he's here in Guyana, Shamar Joseph. He wants to take his family to Guyana, and he wants to take his family to Baracara. And I said, well, yes, I agree with your changing your destination from St. Lucia to Guyana. And I imagine how many of those anecdotes must be happening where the world is now. If we thought because of oil, the world had turned their attention to us. Now, Shamar Joseph has taken that to another level. While I am with you, Shaneika, you've been paying attention to the budget, and you were talking just now about youth and sport. Are you satisfied at the emphasis that was given to youth? What are young people getting out of this budget? We talk about what poor people are not getting out of it. We talk about what Black people and Amerindian people are not getting out of it. But there's this category of our population, young people, who are the majority. In your estimation, what have young people gotten out of this budget?
I know when I would open my mouth to say certain things, people will take it mostly from a political standpoint. But if you sit and do your own reviews, there is nothing much coming out of the budget for people, as I would put it, whether it be young, old, or in between. The general population, in my view, there is not much to benefit from in that sense. When one of the things that bothers me many of the times, and there are always a few exceptions, but when you have budget presentations and you expect to have out of the debate of itself what those ministries intend to do, in the year for the country, you usually don't hear that coming from them. Very few ministries in this budget debate you heard that from. I can say safely that from the minister responsible for social services, I did hear from her much of what they plan to do in the year. But I can't say the same for the rest, particularly youth sports and culture. The minister responsible for youth sports and culture took a position this year where he basically, in his debate speech, talked about every other ministry except his. We can go to the recording and you will see in his last 5 minutes, he probably spent 3 minutes to tell us anything about what he plans to do in that sector for this year. And when he was being asked questions in the estimates to explain some of these projects, we got lots of political statements going around. But the fact is, if we go now and we check projects that were allocated for 2022, 2023, projects that should have been completed either in that year or at least 2023 are not even halfway completed now. And that is a worry. We would have hoped and we would have heard that they were undertaking this massive program to fix up the grounds around communities to ensure that persons are there, their young people are able to play sports, etc. And we went out and took pictures in almost every region, and the majority, 80% of those grounds are not fitting for anything to be done. Some of the grounds that schools were able to, in the communities, we're talking about grounds in the communities that those communities were able to use, is where they would have come together and worked and did their own work on their field to ensure that they got the ground to use for the school that was in within the area, to have into schools, to have, you know, the regular school competitions coming up. All right. So when you heard them talking about that being a part of the budget for a little bit, but again, you hear nothing about how we're going to truly assist one, for instance, in our cultural sector, youth. Listen, you want to talk to young people, you want to get them on board. We all want to know about, you know, what we gonna do with whatever musical thing we got, you know, you got some program for them, etc. You didn't hear any of those things coming out of it. We heard since last year in the 2023 budget that they plan to give a studio about $9 million to ensure that all artists who have songs to sing, etc., are able to do so at a reasonable cost, and we boost, you know, the music that we have in our country. We have splendid singers. You listen to some of the music produced by persons here, I would have heard, and I was like, this is a Guyanese, could never be. But those persons had to go elsewhere. We haven't even begun the conversation of talking about, you know, giving the oh Lord, I'm forgetting the name is slipping me, for, you know, when persons create their own music, etc., that it is protected. Copyright laws. We haven't even begun that conversation, and we're talking about, you know, going through this procedure. So there is a lot to be desired. We talk about programs. We were, even when you go to other ministries, there were programs that helped in terms of night schools, etc., that helped young people who had very unfortunate issues, maybe that would have occurred, that caused them to step out of school, but, you know, they have the willpower, they want to get back in, they want to be able to write exams, etc. A lot of those schools were closed. We talk about training for the youth. A lot of we talk about lack of nurses, etc. We talking about bringing people from all over, and there are many young people who don't have jobs, who are willing to go and be trained, but yet still we're not focusing in on what is needed and how we can train young people to be a part of the sectors that we need to fill. We saw the closing of the nursing school in Linden. And on it, ask anybody, when you go to a nursing school anywhere, you have a lot of young people enrolling, young women and men enrolling, so that they can be a part of a profession that will help them to get money and to help others. But we see these programs being cut down, and all we're hearing about now is a gold program here, a gold program there. We're not seeing the same level of assistance even being given to the University of Guyana. We're hearing that we still have to wait for the free education. With a little pressure, they decided, okay, they're gonna start something about minusing some of that debt if you would have worked for a particular period of time, etc. But we need more to be done. These are the things that affect young people. Them having a good education, them being able to take part in extracurricular activities within the school system and outside of the school system when they've gotten older than that.
Shaneika Haynes here on Politics 101 on a Monday night. Yuri, Westmaas, can you come in and give us your thoughts on the budget? What are your general thoughts as you listen to the budget, listen to the commentaries, listen to the analysis of the budget? What's your takeaway from the budget?
Just infrastructure, not human development, nothing to not. I mean, I don't even want to make a joke about it, but what are we going to eat? You know, asphalt and concrete. You're putting up all of these big buildings, and all you're talking about is infrastructure, and the average person can't go to the market and afford a basket of greens. You know, everything is expensive. The fastest growing economy in the world, but the fastest growing economy for whom? Who's benefiting? I mean, in the 80s, in the 90s, I mean, in the darkest days of the Barnum regime, I didn't have to worry about food. I mean, I didn't have to, my parents could afford a decent meal 3 times a day. You know, and if Barnum did infrastructure, there are certain things he put in place first. Roads and water, and you know, look at West Rhine Veldhousing scheme; it still stands, right? Um, as a monument of achievement. Because, I mean, I see these people, and sometimes, you know, I live in Richmond Hill, and some of them come up here, and I was out Saturday night, I saw a certain minister partying, you know, and I'm looking at the disparity. You know, these people can afford trips all over the world, and one of my concerns is don't they, when they travel, don't they see development? Don't they get a grasp of what it is in other words, where did they come from? Where are their parents? Did they suddenly, like Dr. Haynes said, did they drop from the sky? They obviously had a period where they, you know, growing up, where they suffered some amount of financial strain and everything, and they have become such heartless people. The compassion, the civility, there's no, you know, I think when I was growing up, the debates between Dr. Jagan and Barnum would be, I might disagree with the honorable opposition member, but this is my view. But now it's a shout down and a scream down and a name calling and a cuss down for the simplest things. Nobody has civility and dialogue and compassion and respect. And so I'm looking at this budget, and all I'm seeing is, you know, where's the average, what the infrastructure, what will it do for the country? I mean, except fill in the pockets of a few people. So it's a budget for 1% of one Guyana. And again, one people, one nation, one destiny. That is what I believe in. That is what I will believe in until the day I die. I don't know about one Guyana. I don't know for who and for what purpose.
Yuri Westmaas making his first appearance here in Politics 101. And you notice I've put the band on. We started on Friday trying to raise some funds for ITPADA G. As you know, ITPADA G was voted a subvention of $100 million. Last year, the government did not turn that money over to ITPADA G. It's there in the budget again this year. They have not turned a cent over ITPADA G. ITPADA G continues to function, continues to do its work, but it's crying out for help. And we have decided to pitch in here on Politics 101 and ask you to make a contribution, however small, that contribution, to make a contribution to help Ipadaji keep its doors open. They have light bill to pay, they have water bill to pay, they have staff to pay, transportation. Please, I have some people to thank. I want to thank Shelly. I want to thank Lorraine. I want to thank Denise. I want to thank Agri. I want to thank Calvin. I want to thank Musasi. I want to thank Lynette. And there are a couple of others who I am missing. Those of you who contribute through PayPal, I will get those names and to thank you. But I want to make an appeal here tonight. For those of you who have not yet contributed, please join the others and make your contribution. We don't care however small. I've already turned over what we were able to raise on Friday to Ipadaji, and they were so thankful. They were so thankful because they were able to pay a couple of bills today for what we raised on Friday night. And so I want to appeal to you. The Cash App is the handle is there, the PayPal handle. The same information for PayPal can be used for Zelle. Please make your contribution to Ipadaji. The work they're doing is extremely important. And I'm looking for the information for those of you who are in Guyana and would like to contribute. They don't have an MMG account, but they have a number that you can call. And I am going to find that number shortly and share it with you. But please make a contribution to Ipadaji. The information is there on the screen. Shaneika, let me come back to you. We are now in 2024. We have money more than we could ever dream of. Could get more if the contract was better, but put that aside. Mm-hmm. We are getting money. Mm-hmm. The government is about now to raid the Natural Resource Fund mm-hmm. and to spend. And Yuri made the point about spending on infrastructure mm-hmm. at the expense of other things.
Everything else.
And I want to get your thoughts because I don't want to get the impression that we are saying here spending on infrastructure is a bad thing. But we are saying, one, there are other important areas to spend on. Mm-hmm. But we're asking the question, why the overemphasis on infrastructure? Is there something behind that?
You and I know. You and I know. And I think all Guyanese at this time knows why the majority of the budget keeps going to infrastructure. And it is sick and it is sad. And with this new move that they took on Friday evening to adjust how they take money out of the NRF, I hope that every single Guyanese, young, old, in between, is looking on, because this has very, very, very serious implications for this country at large. You know, young people, and generally a lot of people have this thing, you know, they like to say, man, I don't like to get in politics and I don't want to be a part of it and what's not. What I want to remind young people and anybody who is listening, every single day that you live in any country, the politics of that country affects you every single day of your life and that of your children and their children. And if at any other time there was an example to show, it is now. Because we're talking about this big money. We're seeing all this money going into infrastructure. And literally, many families who would have considered themselves middle class families in this country are finding it hard to survive. They're finding it very hard to pay their rent. They're finding it hard to go in the market and buy anything, the very basic of things. So it is definitely affecting us in every single way as we sit or whatever you're doing right now. It is affecting all of us. And you know what? It stretches beyond that, because when families here as well are affected and they have to call another family member and beg them, it is also affecting them.
Yes.
While we have a government that is sitting every day and telling us, oh, Guyana is so lovely, it's so beautiful, everybody come, everybody come. But the people of the country are starving. The people of the country find it hard to go to work because they got to find that transportation money that keeps increasing while we're talking about infrastructure. And, in the grand plans of things, if we want to be, talk about infrastructure, when you put proper infrastructure in a country, it should then help to lessen the burden of certain things. Maybe the taxi driver don't have to buy as much parts for his vehicle, etc. And we should see that, trickling down to the fare being better. But just 3 years ago, charge drop was around $300-400. It is now 800 Guyana dollars for a charge drop.
Are you serious?
Man, you need to come home.
I have not been home. As you all know, I partly live there. So I have not been home in 4 months. You mean in 4 months, shall drop gone?
It is eight. Listen to me. I went to the bank recently in lovely Hills because I was dropped off, and I went into the bank and I did my business. This is the bank on Camp and Rob Street. And I wanted to go to Ashoria, which is on Church and by the cathedral area there.
Yes.
Right? Street. And I asked the taxi driver, what's the cost to take me over to Ashoria? He said to me, $800. I said, you got to be kidding me. I said, I will not pay you anything more than $500. He said, Auntie, I can't take that. The most I can drop it to is $700. I said, sweetheart, well, I will walk. So I walked my way down Rob Street and got to where I was going. Now, while all this lovely talk is being put out there, and the ministry, they're putting out all these different things that they're telling us, we are not seeing it as a people in our country. This same government who boasts when we had not a dime of oil money, the very president that we have now, while he was Minister of Housing, went on in his usual ranting, the way you hear him carrying on and people every day as he goes out to these outreaches. And he went on the same way in Parliament and said the teachers deserve better, the police deserve better, and the public servants deserve better. And we heard the vice president, the now vice president, then opposition leader, saying to persons before they voted that they will give a 50% increase to public servants. And then we had a minister who is now Minister of Local Government then telling us, oh, that was a Photoshop. While everybody who walked around saw those posters loud and proud all about the town with the flags of 50% increase and free university education. And here we are in 2024, 1 year maybe to elections, and we haven't seen anything close to it in this time. And they are receiving billions of dollars in oil revenues, and much of which they did not even expect to have during this period. Because when we had the war in Ukraine that is happening, oil prices went up. And because we are sellers of the oil, it means that we benefited more than the rest of the world who have to buy the oil. But yet still these same people sit and tell us, oh, don't worry with that. We can't show all this money in because the economy is going to go haywire. This is going to happen. But when it goes into their pockets and they're throwing up the big story buildings, every land that you could think about in a beautiful location, now it's taken. You don't got any more vacant lots around the town, around anywhere. But their pockets can accommodate the money to do whatever they want. But the ordinary Guyanese who are just asking for some more so that they can actually feed their families, to that level, we're not seeing anything coming out for that.
Nothing
You are
coming out from that.
comfortable to tell us that you're giving old age pensioners $3,000 more with a 1 something trillion budget. You feel proud. And half of the infrastructure projects that you're talking about that you've been doing since 2020 are not completed. You're literally at this point, driving around this country is becoming even more difficult because it's almost as if the government don't have a plan. They wake up every day and they decide we're going to dig up this side of the road. We don't tell nobody. So when you boat up here, the traffic is crazy. You dig up here, then you leave there for another 6 months, 7 months. It's left there. Somebody already collect the money and they're doing something else. And that is what we're faced with. You talk about the health sector being impacted. I get calls from in certain areas. They give contract to these boys that they had run for election. The PPP people who know nothing about contract. They dig up the road. 2 months in, nothing is doing. Water is lodging. Then you got mosquitoes. Then you got a lot of people in the community getting dengue. And then the hospitals again are overridden. We got the same problems with the drug. And it is just creating a cycle of things that are happening. While we're boasting of all this money, nothing is being done properly. Nothing. And quite frankly, I don't know if you would have listened, but the president actually said in an interview to a journalist when he asked him whether they're working with a plan. The president's word to that journalist was, we don't have time to make a plan. He gets up and as they go along, they write. The president of this country told an international journalist that he doesn't have time to write a plan. So this is why we're experiencing all of the things that we're experiencing. And something has to be done now. And I'm happy that the teachers are taking a stand. And I wish that everybody else would follow, because we're going to be in some serious trouble in mere months at the rate the government is going.
At the rate the government is going, I would like to thank Rosemond. I would like to thank Samuel for their contributions to Itpadaji. Yuri, would you like to join your voice in encouraging our viewers to contribute to Itpadaji, the work that they're doing? Over to you.
Yes. I mean, again, comes back to the taking away of what is rightfully ours by this administration. The level of disrespect for the average Guyanese people goes beyond the pale. So in terms of Ipadaji, I know that they're doing, that was a grant, right? And who in their right mind would take away something that is rightfully belongs to the people of Guyana, except Bar Jagdeo. So I would encourage anybody who can, any small donation, medium size, large donation, to contribute to the work of Ipadaji in empowering African Guyanese people.
Shaneika?
We have to do something. And quite frankly, I really feel it needs to be now. It really needs to be now, because I am afraid of what will happen if we continue to sit and we continue to take it. And I can only plead with young persons like myself, with all Guyanese, near and afar, that we do what we must. We must We must stand up for what is right. We must call it out. And when need be, we stand with our brothers and sisters when they're out there and they're doing the things that we should be doing. And then when the time comes for us to make a decision that will affect us and our future and the future of our children, that we make the right decision. Because if not now, I don't know what we will have to talk about or to do anything with at the rate we're going. We see this issue of epidemiology. We're seeing so many things happening. You talk, we have the in the same breath, you're having places who don't have the level of scrutiny and entitlement, but they're having $1 billion and $500 million. You saw the Men on a Mission. There is no accountability, nothing happening there, but nobody cares about that. They just give them that money. But when you come to places like Ipadichi that have been around for years, these are organizations that have the systems for accountability, checks and balances, not just here, but overseas as well with the UN, etc. No, we don't want to give you money, but we'll give the flight by night thing that I came up with, and I decide that I am going to use that money. Look, give them 500 million one time. No accountability.
Shaneika Haynes and Yuri Westmaas making the pitch to help Ipadaji. Please go to the Cash App and the PayPal and please make your contribution so that we'll be able to pass something on to Ipadaji tomorrow. We've already passed on our Friday takings. They were able to pay some bills today. Hopefully we can help them to pay some bills tomorrow if you go and make your contribution to Ipadaji. Please put Ipadaji in your message so that we know it is for Ipadaji. And we are going to pass your information on to Ipadaji. I don't know how they can be able to thank you personally, that they want to do so. So those of you who have made your contribution, if you have like an email address or something, you can inbox me, send that to me so I can get it to Ipadaji so they can thank you personally. But I am thanking those of you who have made your contributions. I see a couple of contributions have come in already today. I want to thank you on behalf of Ipadaji for coming out. And I want to thank all of you who've been supporting this program and supporting all programs like this, because we need that support. Some of you are here every day. Every single day, I see the names. I see you're on every day, and we are eternally grateful. Two of the supporters of the program are on here tonight, Yuri Westmaas and Shaneika Haynes. Shaneika, you have a program that you do every Friday. Talk to us, tell us the details. Time, where you can, they can get the program, etc. Shaneika, you're muted.
Sorry about that. Yes. Every Friday, 12:30 to 1:30. It's called Facing the Nation. You can, for persons living here, you can catch it on Channel 6. And of course, all our social media platforms, the People's National Congress Reform page on Facebook, the APNUFC page on Facebook, the People's National Congress Reform on YouTube. You will be able to get them there.
And I am looking at my audience here tonight, and more than half of our audience is on YouTube. I remember when we started these programs, the majority used to be on Facebook. Now YouTube, a lot of people are looking. More than half of our over 1,100 people tonight. 1,100 people tonight live. More than half, it's on YouTube. A big shout out to those of you on YouTube. Yuri, your final thoughts, my brother.
Like I said, I grew up in an era of political infighting and everything, but I've never seen such incivility in politics in my life. I have never seen, I don't think Dr. Jagan or Forbes Burnham would have someone refer to, someone call someone else a low life a person might have been ejected from the party
especially a
immediately,
woman.
especially a woman, would have
Yes.
been ejected from the party immediately without, and then other acts of, in Parliament, using words, referring to it. The Speaker of the House, obviously, um, is not impartial.
Yeah.
I mean, it's sad that he cannot reprimand that man immediately when he spoke. That is not the member. You need to step out of the chambers right away. Just out. I mean, my father, my uncle were engaged in acts of civil disobedience, but not derogatory civil disobedience. There's a standard of political civility that you can disagree or you can agree to disagree without calling somebody a name. And I do not, I grew up, I walked the halls of Freedom House as a young man. I personally know Dr. Jagan. He came to pick my father up every morning. I would sit in his car. He was a gentleman. The most he would ask me if you did your homework, and he would drop me off at school. I know Clement Rohi, Indra Chandrapal, Gail Teixeira. Where are those people? To me, and I was growing up, these were decent people. I don't know if those are the, what you call it, the old heads in the party. But I guess with party politics, you have to be silent. The PP has been taken over by rogue elements. These these 3 or 4 people that are the head of the PPP now, the general secretary, they don't represent the core values of Dr. Jagan or even Janet Jagan. The party is like a runaway train, and it's sad to see that the things that my father and Rory Westmaas and all of us, and all inclusive Guyana, power sharing, give and take here and there. Politics will be politics. Everybody knows that. You're gonna have your arguments, you're gonna have your disagreements, but the yard foul attitude is what I can't stand. Let me put it the way. Yard foul. Sorry. Let me stop there.
Yes, Yuri Westmaas there, speaking from the heart, speaking as one who grew up in a PPP family, and really speaking from the heart about where the party is today. Shaneika, your closing thoughts.
Um, just to build off of what Yuri would have said, one of the things that our chief whip brought back in his budget presentation, the former president, Chedi Jagan, would have talked about having a donkey cart economy while persons wanted to live a Cadillac life. And that was him talking to his own people, reprimanding them for certain behaviors, while, basically the country was in a particular state. But here we have an economy which could be considered a Cadillac economy.
Mhm.
The citizens of the country are basically living in like they're in a donkey cart economy. And it's just sad that we're at this state. And at this point, it is only the citizens of this country, the people who are willing to no longer stay quiet about what we're experiencing, to make the change that is necessary. The politicians could sit, we could talk all day. If it's you only have 31 politicians and the few that may work with them, you don't have anything. It is the people who come together and take a stand that builds a country. And you cannot be silent while these things happen and feel, it's all going to be well. Like I said earlier, everything that happens affects us in some way, form, or shape. And if not us immediately, but our children and their children. So it is now time for us to start the corrective process in dealing with it. And whenever the next election is called, is to handle it properly, help us to make the checks and balances right, that we have what could be considered a free and fair election, and put this government out, because at the rate we're going, we will not have a Guyana to boast of and to talk about, because our human resource will be nothing if we continue down this road.
Shaneika Haynes, eloquent as ever, young woman, member of the PNC. Yuri Westmaas, not as young as Shaneika, but still a young man, coming on for the first time to Politics 101. Thank you all so much for sharing your thoughts. And don't be strangers. Shaneika, when you notice that I am being a stranger, you know what to do.
Will do.
All right. Okay. Thank you all so much. And again, it's so lovely to have young people and new voices speaking up and speaking out on what's going on in our country. Please go to Cash App, PayPal, Zelle, and make your contribution to ITPADG so that we can keep those doors open. The stuff is on the screen there. Please contribute. The teachers are on strike. They've said about 200 to 300 of them were in front of the ministry today. We hope that number grows. And we understand that it was a fair response, a good response on the first day of the strike. It's a strike. It can only get better. Let us encourage them. They're targeting Coretta McDonald, and we have to protect that sister. We have to protect her with our voices, with all the support that we can give. Because when the teachers win, our children win. And when our children win, our country wins. Make your contribution to ITPADG so that I can have something to turn over to them tomorrow for them to go pay some bill or the other. Those of you who contributed on Friday, eternally grateful. Some of you have already sent in your contribution. I'm looking at some of them here. Excuse me. We are grateful. See you all tomorrow. Tomorrow night, Dr. Henry Jeffrey is going to be here tomorrow night. It's Tuesday night, and he's going to be here. And we have quite a lineup this week, but tomorrow night, it's Henry Jeffrey who is on. So until then, I want to thank you all again for staying with us on Politics 101.